This is Do It for a Living, your source for inside information on the future of automotive performance.
There's no way you're going to be totally prepared for every scenario. You know, you just gotta say to yourself, look, I'm going to do the best I can with what I've been given. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to owe up to it, and I'm just going to make it right. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to hide. And I'm not going to, make the customer, feel like he did something wrong.
What's holding you back from starting or growing your business into what it can be? Well, if you're listening to this, it's not a lack of information. What you're about to hear is all you need to get motivated and start making waves. Do It for a Living podcast details the journey of today's true players in their own words. Find out how they broke out so you can too. The time is now. The time is always now.
Welcome back to another episode of Do It for a Living. I'm Kevin Dubois. This week, first we wanted to thank everybody for listening to the show all of last year. It's a new year, 2017. I hope everybody had a good holiday break. This week we've got Frank Rehak of the Driveshaft shop with us. Frank was I met him at the PRI show, I guess about a month ago already, and he was willing to do this interview, and I think several people had actually coaxed him into doing it earlier, and we finally got him on the hook to do it. So, Frank, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thanks for calling.
Awesome. Why don't you go ahead and get us started by telling us what got you started in cars and racing and how you got the Driveshaft shop started?
Oh, I guess, it started at an earlier age. Cars have always been something that intrigued me. I remember, being a young kid, I don't know, probably in my, 8, 9, 10, standing on the road I grew up in and having a buddy of mine cross the street, and we'd wait for a car to come down the road, and we'd actually look, and, we'd see who could identify what car was coming up the road first. It was kind of like a little game we played. But, my dad was always buying and selling cars and, switching things around. And I don't know, machines intrigued me. My father had the company. Growing up, we always had a little shop in the basement. And I don't know, it was just something that really got me. And obviously, as I got older and was able to drive, the obsession took over, and, making parts for the cars just came natural.
So the Driveshaft shop was a business even when you were a little kid of like 8 years old.
Yeah, it was. Actually, my dad worked for my uncle, back, like I said, I guess it was back in the 60s. Back then, it was a little bit different company. They did drive shafts. Back then it was, repair and stuff. But they also did truck bodies, hydraulics, did a lot of different things. And in all honesty, I was working there part-time in high school, but I never really enjoyed the truck end of it. I don't know, just really wasn't for me. As the dry shaft end of the business kind of took off, I kind of ran with it.
Okay. And so you were 8 years old at that time, and you went to high school working for your dad and your uncle. And did you do any kind of tech school or anything? What kind of training do you have for doing this, or is it just all on hands?
Well, actually, when I was going to high school, I was actually certified as a motorcycle mechanic. At the time, I was racing motocross. Me and a couple of buddies of mine, we raced for years there. And I really thought I was going to be a motorcycle mechanic. I got certified, but through high school, working part-time at the shop, pumping gas, whatever it was. When I graduated, I actually went to work for 2 motorcycle places through that summer. And I don't know, just I guess sometimes doing your hobby and trying to make it a business is not really what you expected. I didn't like it. I just kind of went back to my, summer job, so to speak, working for my dad. And I don't know, here I am 40 years later, still working my summer job.
So what kind of time frame was that?
It was... I started working, I guess, part-time in 74, and then, summer 76, I graduated. And then, by the end of the summer, I was working full-time at the shop, originally, cleaning up chip bins under lathes and sweeping up, and and then they allowed me to do one thing and another thing. My dad was pretty good at the way he trained me. He said, everybody in the building is important. The guy who cleans up is just as important as the guy answering the phone, as the guy welding a part together. You're all a team. So he really took his time and made sure that I knew every aspect.
Okay, so you were not handed the crown of the company. You had to work your way up from the bottom, sweeping the floors, working your way up, huh?
Yeah, it was no college. It was kind of fighting my brother at the time, to learn new stuff, and it was a challenge.
Okay, so do you think of yourself as an entrepreneur? Did you set out to work for the company, actually run it, or is it just something that as you went along working for the company, just kind of did they just hand it over to you? How did that work out?
Yeah, it was kind of a weird thing, like I said, taking over the company. My dad had semi-retired, and he's funny. I'd get busy, and I'd give him a call, and he'd be like, "Dad, I'm busy. You want to come back? I really need some help." And he'd be like, "I'll call you tomorrow." And 3 or 4 days of that, and I'd get through the problem. And I don't know if he was really trying to teach me how to run the business or just knew I could handle it. I don't know which one, but at any rate, the whole thing with doing the bodies and the hydraulics and all that. I mean, I know about it a lot. We did it for years, but my heart wasn't in it. And at the time, back in the mid '70s, there was double carbon CV Driveshafts, and I started this whole thing where we could box them and do an exchange program. And I always had in my mind, to somehow make a company where we could actually box products and sell it. I don't consider myself an entrepreneur. It was just something that I guess I aspired to at one time, that, we could actually, do something in the building and get away from getting under these trucks while snow was falling on you, and, or it was just
right.
Not what I wanted to do. I guess
you didn't have to deal with customers at the shop. You could just take in phone orders or whatever is what you were shooting for there. Is that correct?
Well, I mean, it was a local business. I mean, we had a lot of walk-in stuff. I mean, it was a busy business. I mean, we did, back then it was like New York Telephone, all the big truck companies,
okay.
Long Island Lighting. There was a lot going on even back then. I mean, it wasn't near as big a company as it is today, but at the time, or the period in time, I guess there was 8 or 10 guys working there. It was, pretty amazing stuff.
Okay. And you kind of hinted at it that you had tried working for other people, but, you kind of went back to your hobby. So you were you racing motorcycles or cars? Is that why it was your hobby, or is it just something that you were just so used to working on at the shop that's just what you like doing, machines and whatnot?
Growing up, always had mini bikes, and and then remember one time my dad comes home and he's got this twin cylinder 12 horse. It was off a military pump, this big motor, and we put it on a go-kart, and I remember tearing up the streets there in East Northport with it, and it kind of got me hooked. And then like I say, we went into mini bikes and stuff. And I guess as my dad's business got better, I remember buying the first motocross bike, and it was like my pride and joy. And then even through high school, I remember when Honda Elsinore first came out. I got a CR 125, and it was just amazing. I was able to race these things, and my father was real supportive. Actually, my whole family, they'd come to the races, and it was a good time.
Okay.
So.
And has location played a role in the success? I mean, you guys are in North Carolina, is that correct?
Yeah. We, originally being up there on the island, I mean, the company morphed from originally being that welding shop, so to speak. And then, in the late 80s there, we started doing CV axles. In '05, when I got out of the rebuilt industry, we realized we weren't a local business anymore. We moved to North Carolina, and I think we could probably do what we do here back on Long Island. It probably just wouldn't be as profitable, I guess.
Your rent would be quadruple, huh?
Yeah, the island's a little rough on there.
Okay, so you're racing, and obviously in the 70s, the import cars were not, at least I don't think they were a thing, like racing imports. How did you get so, I mean, you guys are just the only drive shaft shop I know of for Evos and that sort of stuff. How did you transition to that kind of stuff?
Well, back then, back in my father had passed away in the mid '80s, and he had a silent partner in the business, and my mom and I bought him out. He kind of he wanted the property, we wanted the business. We separated in '87, and actually the original company is called Suffolk Driveshafts, and we changed it to the Driveshaft shop. And there was a whole thing on why we had to change the name, and it's kind of weird how it came about, because every time I would call a place, I'd be like, yeah, it's Frank from Suffolk Driveshafts. And they'd be like, who? And I'd be like, Frank from the Driveshaft shop, and it just kind of stuck, and we ran with it. And, it just, that's how the name, came about. But the whole time during this whole thing, I was always doing racing stuff. I always had people walking in. I never settled. I always wanted the product to be better. Back then you had to read a lot. You had to, do almost encyclopedias and stuff. When the internet came out, it was like, oh my God, it was insane for me, because any question I had on heat treat or this or that, it was almost at my fingertips. But I mean, it wasn't uncommon back then to have like Scott Shafroff, who's a well-known, drag racer walk in, and, back then, the Conduit was, a real big place to street race. And I remember a funny story. I had this group of guys come in. There's a couple of big, heavy black guys, and, a few Spanish guys come in, and they had this, I don't know if it's like a 72 or 73 Cadillac Coupe de Ville, and they had mid-engined it. And it was the perfect street sleeper. It was just an insane car, and they wanted a drive shaft, and they were running for like I'm talking, like I said, like in the late '70s now. Mm-hmm. They were running for like $5,000 on the Conduit. Wow. And I remember the one guy going, he's like, man, I hear you build a good thing. He's like, if this thing breaks, I'm going to come back, right? It's just one of those things, and I don't know why, but that kind of stuff just did it for me. I enjoyed it, and
achieving the impossible, right? Isn't that your logo?
yeah, that was actually my brother had actually come up with that logo years ago, and when we reincorporated as the Driveshaft shop, I just kind of used it as our tagline. But I don't know if any of the listeners knows, like John Nobile. I mean, we kind of him, and now his son is racing pro. We kind of were from the same town. We ran into each other, and matter of fact, we ended up in Lamaze class together. So somehow racing and cars and stuff just always seemed to come together. It just it seemed like it was destined to be in my life.
And so how did that transition to the import stuff?
Well, as time went on, we through say like the late '80s and in the mid '90s, there we became a very large axle rebuilder. We were probably at one time we were probably one of the best in the Northeast. We had at one time 40 employees or so.
A bunch of them, huh?
Oh yeah, it was a big operation. We had 12 vans delivering. It was before any of the warehouses got involved, and we were pretty much supplying every place. But that's when we kind of really started to do more import type stuff, because back in the 70s and early 80s, with drive shafts, there was no import cars using drive shafts. So when front wheel drive came along, one of the reasons we broke free from the partnership was I wanted to start doing CV axles, and I didn't want to just be an employee there. I knew how hard it was going to be, and and the amount of time it was going to take and figure out. So that's what it came about. So as that whole rebuild thing ramped up, it was a great thing for a long time. But as it started to fall apart, near the I gotta say the mid to late '90s, I started scrambling. I started realizing I had to kind of reinvent the company, and that's when I started focusing on doing import stuff, because we knew the cars. We were doing the axles already. I kind of knew them. How hard could it be to do drive shafts? that's more when we kind of took the focus away from rebuild and went into racing parts.
Okay. And you just touched on this, and it's kind of interesting. So you said the axle rebuilding went up. You were as big as 40 employees, and then it all kind of fell apart. Why did it fall apart? Was that just people selling reman axles kind of took over the business? Is that what the case was?
Yeah, well, like I said, we've always had the Driveshaft department in the company. We used to do a bunch of stuff. I always enjoyed the custom end of it because it kind of perked my curiosity and my abilities. But when we were doing the rebuilt axle thing, it was kind of basic. I mean, you take it apart, you change the worn parts, you put it back together. But what started happening there in, I'm going to say probably 94, 95, China started bringing in brand new parts that started making rebuilt obsolete because, when you do a rebuild, you've got a core.
Yep.
Well, there was so much going on with these cores, and the cores had gotten so expensive that sometimes the core was worth more than the actual rebuilt part. So when the auto parts stores were offered, these axles with no cores, and the price was there, it all but killed it. I mean, in all honesty, it destroyed an industry that was really doing well in the United States. I mean, there was a lot of rebuilders and a lot of companies, and I can honestly say we were one of the last ones standing. It was a hollow victory, but but in all honesty, when the racing thing took over, for quite some time, what I would do is I'd work from like 7 in the morning till about 4 or 5 at night, and then I would do the racing thing. And in the beginning, we were taking parts from different cars because we had this big load of parts, and we kind of knew what everything was and sizes and shapes and cage and races and all that, and we kind of morphed these parts from 7 different cars into something that worked. And that's kind of how the whole import racing CV axle and Driveshaft thing took off. I remember my brother-in-law, Mike, had showed me a picture, and I'm not even sure what magazine it was, but there was like a long bed Chevy pickup truck, and there was Honda axles broken, piled in this like mountain, and I was like, I bet you I could figure out how to fix that, and kind of like, the light went off, and, I kind of found my direction.
Awesome. And here you are today, right?
Yeah. It's
so
long ride.
Have you ever doubted yourself and wondered if this isn't going to work, what are you going to do? And how did you overcome that feeling and move forward?
Yeah, I mean, it still even happens today. Running a business or trying to keep a business successful it's not a destination. It's something you got to do every day. When that rebuild thing started to fall apart, my wife Lorraine, she just wanted us to close down and me go get a job. And I'll be honest with you, it's all I ever knew. I mean, at the time, I was probably doing it for over 20 years. I didn't know anything else, and I didn't know any better. And in hindsight, I should have listened to her. I mean, there was, anybody who's been in business, it cycles, it goes up and down. And I got to tell you, that was probably some of the hardest times in my life, trying to get out of one thing without going bankrupt and starting this other thing. But at the same time, it was exhilarating because it made me want to work again. It made me, happy. I was like, oh my God, this is cool. And, racing's if it's in your blood, it excites you, you kind of enjoy it.
And so it sounded like that was kind of your worst experience in business. Is that the case?
I would say yes. I would say the downfall of rebuilt was by far the worst thing that I'd been through. I was as close to bankruptcy as I think I'd ever want to be.
And for listeners who don't know, your wife is a part owner of the company as well, right? So she's not just somebody telling you to stop doing this, right?
Yeah. Well, actually, at the time she was raising the children. She okay. She came on as they got older and started going to school. She came in and she started working in the office, and she was good. I mean, she was really good. She, we became quite a powerful team. She's, I owe a lot of our success to her. She,
Awesome.
she's that little thing in the back of my head saying, you might want to think a little better about about what you're doing before you do that.
My wife does the same thing. And she's actually at the point where she's taking care of kids and they're about to start school. So I'm almost to that point where I can bring her to the shop and make her start doing work too, right? So what's something you're doing right now that has you fired up?
Oh, we had a couple of things going on right now. We just bought a Mazak Integrix machine, which is it's basically a lathe and a mill done as one machine. Crazy, just crazy axis machine. It literally got hooked up yesterday, so we're going to go out there and play this afternoon. But the parts that we'll be making with it, the two things that we have going right now that kind of have me fired up is on the Driveshaft side, we're doing what's called sound abatement in Driveshafts, where what we're starting to realize is a driveshaft is a hollow tube, and when it spins, it emits sound. If you pick up a piece of tubing and hit it with a screwdriver, it rings like a bell. Mm-hmm. So if you have noise in your motor, tranny, and mostly in the rear, it tends to use that drive shaft as a broadcast system or speaker. What we've been noticing is, and this is a little more on the modern muscle side of what we do, a lot of the newer rear ends aren't I don't know, I guess they're just not made as well as they used to be. And then you get the whole aftermarket thing where ring and pinion gears aren't actually lapped or done as well as they had at one time. So having sound in the shaft has become a big problem. I mean, you have people who want 1,000 horse AC and a nice stereo. And it just you need to have the part quiet. So we came up with this idea. It was an idea of mine to put some type of foam in this. And in all honesty, I've been messing with this for years. I had tried the Good Stuff spray foam. Uh-huh. It doesn't stay. It doesn't set up properly inside a tube. It actually needs air to set up. Yeah. Dana Spicer at one time sold a cardboard insert that you could put in it, which worked quite well. They stopped selling it. Then we were trying pool noodles. We tried everything, but recently, actually, I found some engineering data that there's certain durometer foams and densities. It's actually a certain design that has to be used that'll work quite well, and we're actually testing it right now. My son Frankie is very into sound, and he almost has a sound studio in the house, and we've gone back and forth, and as simple as just hitting it with a drumstick to spinning them into machines and seeing what different sounds come out of it. But I'm pretty excited about it. We're still in the middle of it, and it's still kind of in its infancy, but definitely something that I'm pretty excited about, because anytime I can make that product a little better, it makes me feel good.
So this is way and above and beyond what I would have thought you guys put into the engineering on a drive shaft. So you're like almost doing like harmonic vibration testing and measuring the frequencies that the thing I guess gets louder at, is almost what you're doing, and you're trying to decrease that sound from a drive shaft.
Yeah. Well, maybe we haven't gone that far now. Now, back in the 90s, I had a Schenck Trebell made what was called a Vibraport, and it was a machine that you could actually balance a drive shaft on a car, truck, whatever it would be. Back then, stretch limos were really big, and I would use this machine under there, and it would actually print out a graph and tell you where your spikes are from, like say 50 cycles to 10,000 cycles, which is same as RPM in a car. Not that we're testing the actual frequency, although I could probably get one of those Vibraports and figure it out. It's a broad range. It's never just one single thing. And being that there's so many different cars out there, the major manufacturers, the big car companies spend a fortune figuring that kind of stuff out. It's amazing. Actually, like the newer Mustangs have a 9-pound harmonic damper in the back half of the shaft. It's one of the reasons they're, you get a Mustang that has a 45-pound drive shaft, and it's ridiculous. But this technology, put into it, like I said, it makes for a better part, and it makes the experience better. And we kind of have this this motto around here. It's like, don't let the machines win, and like I said, every single guy in this building, we're all car people. I mean, we live, breathe, and I'm not saying that we're insane about it, but we like the finer end of what can be done. And I'm not going to say I do it all myself. The team that I've assembled after all these years of doing this, they're really great, and we bounce ideas off each other. And this foam thing has been a collaboration of everybody in the building, and it's working well. It's actually we've sent out several test shafts, and the results have been pretty amazing.
Now, normally we don't get into the technical details of the product, but I'm intrigued. Is this apply to like the carbon composite drive shafts too, or is it only for steel drive shafts?
It does actually. Actually, you said steel. We do very little steel.
Oh, sorry, aluminum.
Aluminum. Yeah. No, but but I prefer aluminum and carbon. Harmonics in a drivetrain is an actual big problem, especially in these newer vehicles. People don't realize you have the explosions in the cylinder walls, and it's an unsteady path of power pulsing, and then you get the every bearing has however many needles and balls, and all this stuff creates a symphony of sound and pulsing that ends up in the drive shaft. So not everyone. Most people think that the newer drivetrains that have these, the proper term is guibo, but it's a rubber drive donut like you used to see in BMWs and Mercedes. They think that they're there to take this away, and they're really not, because there's a solid pin in the middle. So if it was to transfer from the motor and tranny to the drive shaft, it still can, because it's solid. Really what they do is they put a two-piece shaft in it with a very, very soft rubber hanger. So the harmonic is still there. It's just the support in that soft rubber is allowing it to move, but you don't actually feel it or hear it in the cabin.
Gotcha.
So when you go to a one-piece shaft, it'll exaggerate all this stuff. So you'd mentioned carbon fiber. Carbon is very, very good at stopping the harmonic transfer, but it's not perfect at it. It still has to have structural integrity, so when it goes into the higher RPM range, it doesn't, jump like a jump rope. By putting the foam inside that and the aluminum, yes, it really it actually raises the critical speed a little bit, and really makes a big difference when it's spinning. Because when we're testing in the balancer, you can literally hear a different volume of sound coming out of the shaft as it spins, even in the balancer. And I mean, this is just a direct drive, electric motor.
Mm-hmm. Very, very interesting stuff. Like I said, yeah. I would have never thought that kind of like a thought process went into designing a drive shaft. I just kind of figured they would make it lighter and then make sure it doesn't break.
And in all honesty, most do. We're we kind of think out of the box here. Most dry shaft places just, and don't get me wrong, I'm not downplaying anybody, but most places will buy parts and they put them together and they consider themselves manufacturers. We're a 50,000 square foot machine shop full of Mazak machines and spline makers and this and that. And, this has evolved over years that, like I had an idea and I wanted to do something. I had to go buy the machine. So, I do whatever it takes to make it happen, and, hope and pray that it works out. And we do it, we just make it happen. And it's really nice to be able to go back there and know that now we have the ability to, have an idea and follow through with the complete thing. It's kind of cool.
Okay. You just touched on the next question too. So, let's get started about the company itself. So the Driveshaft shop, you said you're in 50,000 square feet. Do you guys rent that or own that?
No, we own it. We actually 3 years ago, maybe a little more now, we were in 20,000 square foot in North Carolina, and the railroad forced us out of a building, and we kind of had to make a decision on whether we were going to kind of step sideways, and just go into a similar size building or go to a bigger building. And was kind of tired, it wasn't the best time in my life. There's a lot going on, and I was kind of hoping to kind of settle things down. But again, talking with my wife, Lorraine, and, realizing where things were heading, we decided to grow, so we moved, I don't know, a couple miles down the road to this 50,000 square foot building, and we own it. And, now we own two buildings.
So the other one, did the railroad buy the other building, or did they just?
No, it was a real, like I said, real problem. They were putting an underpass on the side road we were on, so they put the temporary track behind the building. The side road was torn up, and then they were putting a turning lane in front of the building. So they took an industrial building and made it to where you couldn't get to it. Didn't want to buy it, and then we ended up in a lawsuit over it. It was a mess.
Wonderful.
But the good news is they finished the underpass about 8 weeks ago. It's up for sale. It'll sell, and life will move on.
Okay, so the building is not completely useless anymore. It's useful again.
Yeah, now it is. Yeah,
okay.
We made lemonade, I guess. So.
All right. So have you guys ever written a formal business plan?
No, never.
Okay, so then the next question is how on target are you with it? It does not apply, right?
Well, in all honesty, I keep kidding with my guys that I have more ideas than the machines and the time and the place will ever have, and I do. Over the years, when you've been doing something for as long as I have, like I said, last summer was 40 years. I just think a lot, it's almost a curse because sometimes I can't sleep or I'll wake up in the middle of the night thinking about something and I'll jot down notes. But, there are always, we are always months ahead in my mind, and when somebody says, oh, do you have this part? And I realized we had made it 6 months ago and forgot to put it on the website, or, because I'm usually, by the time I figure it out, I methodize it, I, get things going, and then it becomes a standard product. I'm 2 or 3 projects ahead already. So, it's I don't know. It's definitely one of my problems that I could definitely tell people I do more than we do. There's probably, I would say, at any given time, 20% more that we have ready than we probably told people.
That is a wonderful problem to have.
It is.
If you have product on the shelf that you don't even have on your webpage, that tells a lot about, like being able to fulfill orders, and people don't have to wait for stuff, which is like pretty much the curse of the import industry, is everything is made to order and takes forever to get. So
well, we are cursed. I'm not going to say, I'm going to tell you that I know how to make it. Whether it's made or not, well, that's the problem. It's generally not. We have the ability to, and it's being that you get a warehouse, they pick up a phone, they call, they try and keep it in stock. When you manufacture stuff, especially with what we do, we get material from Sweden, we get CV joints from Germany. You can't just pick up the phone and say, hey, Sweden, I need another 6 tons of 300M, because it's 6 weeks on the water, even if they had it made, so we have these blanket purchases. So growing is a good thing, but it can also be a problem, and as big a problem as not being busy, because if you're too busy and you're not taking care of your customers, it really can be just as bad.
Yeah. Okay, so you're even though you may not have a formal business plan written down, you are obviously constantly thinking stuff, constantly evolving the business and kind of moving forward, I guess you could say, right?
Yeah. Back in the rebuild thing, it was a hard lesson to learn. Like we had no, I'm not going to call it an exit plan, but we had no plan B. There was just, you wait for the new car to come out, hope they built a crappy axle and it wears out, and you start, with this, we're constantly, like if God forbid we ever get caught up with something, which very rarely happens, I'm always being asked to make something different, or again, my ideas on changing current products, because that's the other thing. Half of what we do is, even though we've made something, if I find something new or another way to do it, I just implement it right away. I don't even think twice. I just, it gets brought into even the current products. You'll have versions of the same product change over the years, like our 5.9 Honda axles. I mean, they probably changed 20 times, literally. I remember just, I got a hold of a metallurgist. He actually had a doctorate in metallurgy. It was actually kind of a cool story. These guys were literal rocket scientists. And when I tell you rocket scientists, in their prime, they actually made the lunar landing limb. Okay,
Awesome.
So true, yeah. And when we were back on Long Island, they were like, I don't know, 10 buildings down from us, and I got to know the guys, and we got a really good rapport going. And they were doing this Technopulse thing where they'd electromagnetically scramble molecules between steel and aluminum, and it would actually create a new material, but bonding it like a weld. And but anyhow, the one gentleman there was a doctorate in metallurgy, and I kept asking him, and I wore this guy out, and we tried. Man, I'll bet you we tried 20 different types of heat treats, and this is over time. This isn't like we went to the heat treater and said, I want 20 different things. We've tried this, try that, try this and that, and then eventually realized, as Sport Compact grew, not only in size, but in the beginning, Pro Car was doing 12, 11 seconds, when we first got involved. And, now they're in the 7 seconds. So as those cars got faster, we had to keep reinventing. We had to keep, Van, I remember I'd come in on a Monday, we'd have like a stretch of 6 months, nothing broken, no problems. And, I'd get 10 phone calls on a Monday, and I'd be like, man, what happened? They changed from, a 24-inch tire to a 26-inch tire. Well, what they don't realize is it raised the shock factor. So we constantly were trying to chase that elusive perfect heat treat, and then it just came down to size. It just after a while you just need bigger. So, and that's where it ended up. But yeah, if you don't keep reinventing, you're probably not going to make it.
Okay. How many employees do you guys have?
Right now I think we're at 28 or 29 in this building.
Do you find it difficult to manage all of them?
Yes and no. Back when we had the rebuild stuff, it was really hard. I was kind of green. It grew really fast. Now, I kind of have a simple way of doing things. I tell people when I hire them, I said, look, I've got a very simple way of the picture I have for the business. If you're hired for a job, that means the job was created. Somebody else was doing it, and now there's a job created. If you take this job and run with it, and we don't have to oversee what you're doing, that frees us up to create another job, and the company grows. The second we have to start watching you, we're double checking you, or this and that, this is all going to fall apart. So basically the way it's run now is, we have a shipping department, we have the axle assembly department, we have a powder coat department, we have the machining department, we have spline department, we have manual machining department, and we have, aluminum and steel drive shaft section and the carbon section. Each area has, like the head guy in there, and the people under them are responsible for them. And I'm not saying that, it's like a monarchy or anything. It's just, if somebody needs to take a day off, they tell their guy, their supervisor, and then, it trickles down to me. But I don't always need to know. And at one time I really felt like I need to know everything that was going on in the building. And every time I knew how to run every machine. And, you get to the point where, you realize that Ford he didn't make that first assembly line by himself. He had a handful of really talented people. And, and my advice to anybody listening is, I'm not saying don't put up with somebody, but if you really know in your gut that somebody's not doing something the way you want it done or the way you think it should be done. You either got to change their way of thinking or find somebody else, because I'll admit over the years I was terrible at that. I hate firing people. You really had to do something bad to get fired here. But realizing over the years, now, like I say, after being in business for so many years, and then being lucky enough to get a handful of good guys, and then you were able to realize what a good guy was, what somebody who, I'm not going to say a bad person, but a person not good for your operation.
Uh-huh.
I'd almost prefer to have somebody that we get along with and communicate that may not be 100% what I'm looking for, that we can train,
Uh-huh.
than have somebody that is unbelievable at what their knowledge base is and what they can do, but they don't get along with people, because it just, we're at work more hours than we, with each other than we are usually with our families.
Yeah.
I don't like drama, and I don't like, having problems. I just, we all got to do something for a living. Like, I hired you to do a job. You do your job. We can joke about it. I'm not a slave driver. We'll stand around and talk about cars, bicycles, food, whatever you want. But, as long as we have that one common goal and it's met, that's all we look for.
Awesome. And how many hours a week are you working?
That's a tough one. Back in the day, I'd get to work and, get to work at 7 in the morning, go home at 7 at night. Since the invention of the internet, it's kind of hard. I get up in the morning and I'll probably do 40, 50 emails. People say I have banker's hours. I'll show up to work at 11 o'clock, but, I'll have worked probably an hour and a half, 2 hours before that,
Uh-huh.
at my leisure, drinking coffee, playing with the dogs, whatever it might be. And then I'll stay at the shop to 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And then I'll go home and then do more emails, through the day. I'd probably do 150 emails a day, but I don't know, what would that be? Probably, you're probably still in that, 9, 10 hours a day thing. But it's not like it used to be, where I'd show up and then when I went home, you'd think about it. Now, I mean, between Facebook and texting and, forum messaging and, there's your business is never off. And well, if you care about your business, it's never off. If somebody's got a problem, as long as, they're not being a pain, like I don't mind being bothered, when I'm not at work,
Uh-huh.
especially because a lot of us, as racers, let's face it, a lot of us have other jobs, and they start building the car at 6 o'clock at night. If you got a problem at 10, if I'm around and I see the message, I'm gonna answer the person, especially if I can help them, because then their night goes better.
Yeah. So, I mean, you said your wife is involved. Did you have any kids at all? Are they involved in this as well?
Yeah. Actually, I have 2 daughters and a son. My son Frankie, he's 26 now. He actually went to school for machine engineering, and yeah, he works here now. He's I won't say that I had him sweeping the floors, but I moved him around to every department except actually Driveshafts. He can pretty much do anything here. But what he does mostly now is he does a lot of the prints and helps me. Like when we started the carbon fiber department, he he started it with me, and that was when he was fresh out of college, and I kind of got a kick out of him because he's like me. He's a perfectionist, and he likes to make sure everything is, just right, I had to laugh. I was like, man, I don't know where he gets it. And my wife gives me the look, but at any rate, he was really afraid there was going to be a problem. And I said, Frank, when you start something like this, I said, there's going to be a problem. I said, man, I said, think about it really. If you don't have a problem with this, how will you ever know if you're really doing the right thing? I said, not that I'm wanting a problem. I said, but we're going to make mistakes. It's going to happen. I don't know, recently, we've probably been doing this carbon shifts, 7, 8 years now. Recently I said to him, I said, you remember what we went through with that? Learning how to,
Uh-huh.
glue and bond and, this, that, and the other thing. And, I feel it was a good lesson for him. I think I think he probably got more into that than his schooling because, if you're going to start something, there's no way you can be totally prepared for every scenario. You just gotta say to yourself, look, I'm going to do the best I can with what I've been given. And if I make a mistake, I'm going to owe up to it, and I'm just going to make it right. I'm not going to run away. I'm not going to hide. And I'm not going to, make the customer, feel like he did something wrong. Just
So it seems like the perfect. Straight out of college. He's applying his understanding of materials and machining and sort of stuff like that. And you immediately put him in charge of, or at least worked with him on developing these carbon drive shafts, which has turned out to be, pretty much what the future of racing is. At least with drive shafts, right?
It's a very big part of the company now. We did not expect to sell as much carbon as we do. We probably sell more carbon than anybody in the world right now. To the point where we had to get 2 suppliers for tubing. They couldn't keep up with us.
Are you guys laying it up yourself, or are you buying tube and bonding it to certain lengths and stuff? Or is this all proprietary?
No. We're buying the tube. Okay. I won't say who we're getting it from, but the one company we're getting it from, we had an issue. We started with another company who was actually manufacturing shafts and wanted to get out of it. Got together with them, worked out pretty well. So, I can talk with the engineers. Matter of fact, some of the tubing that was done, we actually had spec made for us based off of my knowledge and the engineers' abilities. And we've come up with a few different ways of doing different things. Actually, we're working on some other stuff right now. It's anybody listening will laugh when it comes out, but the ugly shaft is on its way. Wait till you see this thing.
The ugly shaft, okay.
There's no other way to put it. It's ugly, but man, is it going to work good.
Okay. So your son is involved, or your daughter is involved as well?
No, actually, my daughter's, my oldest daughter is a teacher. She teaches dance, and my youngest, she just actually graduated, and
Okay.
really not sure. She's not sure what she's doing yet. She comes in and she helps Lorraine in the office right now.
Okay.
But it's not her, her forte.
Okay.
Yeah. Frankie actually, my son, I was telling you about that Integrex machine. It's a very involved thing, and between the head machinist Ken Shaw and my son Frankie, they're going to have to figure out how to run this thing. It's a pretty insane machine. We'll have videos up of it soon, I'm sure. But,
awesome. I'll be sure to check those out.
That's
too.
his next, Frankie, I bought this thing, now figure out how to use it, please.
So are you spending most of your time managing the business or doing the work? So it sounds like you're answering a lot of emails. Is that not something that you could hand off to somebody else, or is that what you like to do?
We do a lot of international stuff now. A lot in Australia, and, the Asian countries. We're probably one of the few companies that sends auto parts to Asia. But mostly I'm in the office, I will admit. Unhappily, I much prefer to be out in the shop. I get out there as much as I can. Any new project that's being done, I had been doing almost all of it myself. A couple of years back, one of the gentlemen that worked for me, Tad Todman, I've been training him on how to do what I do because, like I said, a company can't grow if you do too much. I remember years back when we had the rebuilt company on top of the hill where we were, there was another very large starter and alternator rebuilder, and I went out to lunch with the owner every now and then, and we were getting a CNC grinder that would redo the internals of the CVs, and we were eating lunch, and I look at him and I go, Bob, man, now I'm going to have to learn how to run a CNC machine, and he goes, no, you don't. And I thought he was crazy because I really prided myself in knowing how to do every single thing in that business. So if somebody left or there was a problem, I could run right there and do it. And, he kind of changed my thinking on it. He said, Frank, he goes, your job is to make sure somebody is in front of that machine that knows what they're doing. He goes, if you think you can do every single thing in that company, it will never, ever grow. You'll never become a big enough company to where income isn't going to be an issue, or it's not even so much an income thing. It's the company needs money to grow. It's an entity. If it's not fed like an employee, it doesn't go anywhere. So it kind of changed my thinking on that. And today, I mean, there are machines in here that I'm sure I could figure out how to run, but I don't have to, because I have people that work for me that, worked for me now for a long time. And I trust, and like I say, it's about that team. I always say that I work with people; they don't work for me. Because we're a team. Like I said, the guy who cleans up is as important as my head machinist or the guy who sets up the rack rollers for splines or whatever. Because you know what, if he goes to throw something in the garbage and it's full, it's going to be a problem. And
Yep.
If the floor is not clean, and it just works out.
Perfect. Does the pay justify the time spent?
Yeah, business has been strong lately. If you've been in business for 40 years and you're not making money,
You're
you
doing
probably
something
should
wrong,
go to
right?
work for somebody else. Yeah.
Right.
So,
Okay, and what is the primary tools of your trade? As far as like managing the business, are you guys using QuickBooks? It sounds like you have department managers, and kind of break it down how you manage it.
It kind of is, but we use the QuickBooks enterprise version for manufacturing. One time, back with the rebuild stuff, we were on custom software. It was a real pain. So we went on QuickBooks when I sold out the rebuild thing. Been on it ever since. It's good. I'm not going to say it's great. Being a manufacturer, it's very hard to keep track of raw materials into parts. You almost can't do it on a spreadsheet. It's snap rings, and you start with a certain amount of weight and you throw away chips, and I got to the point where I just like, it's easier to walk up and down an aisle with a clipboard and see what we need than finished product, yes, but not
Raw materials, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah. But that, and then on the manufacturing side, SolidWorks and Mastercam, and there's some new thing that they had to get so the thing could communicate with that new machine. But again, I get to the point where, like I said, if you're hired for a job, I need that person to do that job. And I'm not saying that if somebody leaves, there's going to be a big hole. I actually pride myself in having employees that can intermingle through the building. And what I mean by that is, when I was in the rebuild company, the guys that I had working for me were so worried about their positions, they would never show anybody else anything. and if somebody left, it was a real problem. But here, when I do the interview and I talk, I tell people, look, we're like I go through the whole thing about, you're hired for a job, and, we're here more and blah, blah. But I say to them, look, when you're asked to show somebody something, it has nothing to do with your being fired. It's more about, what if you get hurt this weekend? Do you really, and you're going to be out 6 weeks, do you really want me to have to let you go and hire somebody to replace you? Or would you prefer we have somebody, like your right-hand guy that can cover for you? I say, you're not going to lose your job. Actually, to be honest with you, it's first week in January, the gentleman who head up this spline department, Robbie Krause, he fell coming off a chairlift and fractured his lower leg, and thank God, Jody, he stepped up to the plate, and, again, I sent my son back there and actually, what do you call it? Greg's son, who's going to college, happened to be here, who works summers with us, and it just worked out. A bigger company, or actually any company, should know how to lick its wounds. Having somebody leave is one thing, but the other thing is you kind of want to help your guys out if they get hurt. You don't want to just, in my opinion, I like to help the people work for me because they're the ones who have helped the company grow and get to where it's at. So if you treat them well, especially when there's a problem, I don't know, to me, I almost feel indebted to them. And I do that. Like Robbie, we've been texting, I called him, we've been back and forth, and, he's probably going to be laid up for 5 or 6 weeks with this thing. And I just said, hey, sit back, relax, watch some TV, Robbie,
and you probably provide insurance for all your people. I mean, you're a big enough company to do that, right?
Actually, we don't.
Interesting.
We when we moved from New York to Carolina, I don't understand this, but we were on a when we moved down, I moved 5 of my guys with me, 5 of my head guys. We had a group plan there. When we came to Carolina, it was more expensive to have a group plan than it was to have it separate. So I just gave the guys their money back. They went out on their own thing. They actually, did. I guess they made out better. But in all honesty, when it comes to health insurance, and this is just my take on it, the medical industry has put the cost of this on business owners for a very long time, and it was such a touchy subject that it was hard not to have it, but it's gotten to the point where somebody's got to do something about it. It's ridiculous.
An agreement there.
Yeah, and like I sometimes I feel bad about not having it, but it's gotten to the point where health insurance for a family, it's almost here, and I'm and then there's the whole thing where if you make more, you pay more. Well, obviously the guys here make decent money, so they'll be paying more.
Uh-huh.
It can't. No one can brunt it anymore. Okay, we're in the car parts industry. I mean, mine and Lorraine's health insurance is like tripled in the last 4 years. Imagine if you went to buy an axle and it was triple the price in 4 years.
Were you on an independent plan before? I guess you could say Obamacare took over. Is that?
Yeah, we were.
Okay.
We were.
So it was pretty expensive even then for you, right? Because mine was like reasonably expensive, and now it's like very expensive.
Yeah. In all honesty, since the Obamacare, it's been horrendous.
Yeah.
It's I really, like I say, I'm not very political, but I really hope somebody does something about it soon because it's out of hand.
I'm in agreement. I'm not gonna hold my breath or anything, but I fully expect it to not get any cheaper anytime soon, at least. So.
Yeah, when we were PRI, we went mountain biking in some underground cave, there in Louisville before we got there, and I fell and broke a rib, and I'll be honest with you, I have insurance. I didn't even want to go and get a check because I know the runarounds you get now. And Lorraine made me when I got back, and it was a runaround. It was ridiculous what they put me through just to obviously they can't do much for something like that, but
3 different specialists, and you go to the hospital and you get 3 different bills for the same visit, right?
Oh, I went to a orthopedist, bone specialist, and he's, I don't do ribs. And then they sent me to this place, and I went to another place, and then, then they took the X-ray and said, yeah, you got a broken rib. I knew that. Racing motocross, I'm not going to say I broke stuff all the time, but I've broken ribs twice before. I know how they feel. It's not a welcomed thing. I mean, it's kind of a pain, really, in your side. So.
All right. Well, let's continue on here. We got a little sidetrack, but that's good conversation. What is your primary sources of revenue? Is it mostly part sales? You're obviously not doing any service anymore, it sounds like. I mean, you're just manufacturing stuff, maybe engineering. Do you like, I guess, private label stuff at all?
We do. Not a lot. Most of it is, most people like to cross brand with Driveshaft Shop because, the name that it has. But, primary revenue income is the parts we make. I get asked to make other parts all the time, and I just, my machines just don't have the time. If someone contacts us and they're doing one-off cars or whatever, we'll help help them engineer the parts, and both for cost and strength and all that. But the primary is the actual parts we're manufacturing here.
Okay. And are you guys doing any advertising and marketing?
Yeah, we kind of dropped a whole lot with the print ads, like I'm sure most people have. We found that working forums is actually really a strong thing, especially for us. It's time consuming. It's a pain. It can actually bite you. It can be a problem, but in the end of it, it's a good way to not only show the customer you care if there's a problem, but it also allows you to put a knowledge base out there on things that like this dampened shaft. We did a whole thing on it, and we will, when we actually start selling them as a regular product, I'll probably do a more in-depth thing on showing exactly sound readings and all that. But it seems to have become that, and obviously Facebook is for our demographic is pretty good.
Yeah.
Instagram, that kind of stuff.
And you guys obviously do trade shows, so you're at PRI. You don't do SEMA, do you? I don't remember seeing you guys.
I used to do SEMA every other year, and I may go back to that. Being we're a little more on the hardcore end of racing products. I'm not going to say that those guys weren't there, but one thing I do miss when not being there recently is the international contacts. We do a ton of business internationally, and I just don't get that face-to-face time with the people that might text me at 11 o'clock at night, or on the
because
weekends.
It's like 4 o'clock in the afternoon for them, right?
yeah like my oh my god, we sell a bunch of stuff in Australia, and a lot of the guys have my cell phone, and and they're welcome to call me, but at like 5 or 6 in the afternoon, those calls will start, and it's just like I said, business is it's really changed. It's not what it once was, but in a good way.
And you guys, I mean, I've known some people that you guys have, I don't know if you sponsor them or just give them small discounts, but is sponsoring cars, is that something you consider part of your marketing plan?
It is. It's a big part of what we do. Again, going back to the roots of just being a car guy.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if I see somebody building something and I like it, I almost want to give them the parts, because it just and not because I want my part in there. It's just I want to make sure he doesn't have a problem with it. Cars like Norris Priano's car. Lund's been driving that car forever. All the other top teams, guys like Mark Carlisle or Farks, American Racing Headers, cars that are in the upper echelon of what their field is. I like being a part of, because there's generally those teams have a lot more insight. So when I was talking about changing a product and doing something different, when you have a relationship with those teams, you get honest feedback. You get really good feedback. A lot of times I'll give something to somebody, and I don't hear from them ever, or like everything that was discussed or planned never happens. But if you notice, there's a handful of guys that we help out a bit, and the reason is because either we have a current relationship that's working real well, or we've had a very long-term relationship of both give and take. People don't realize it's a two-way street. If I give you a product, it's nice to be able to say it's on the car, but you got to tell people. And
right.
one of the actually was Vaughn Gittin, the drift driver. We were talking one day, and he goes, Frank, he goes, I never have a problem. He goes, so it's never in my mind. He goes, because every year we talk and we discuss about, what we can afford to do or help with, and this and that. And, a lot of times, it's kind of like the out of sight, out of mind with a race car, because you're only focusing on where that one problem is, not remembering where a whole nother part that could be an issue, but it isn't,
So I guess it's a blessing and a curse to be able to give your products to people for sponsorship, and then never have problems with it, but then you don't ever hear from it, right? So.
Yeah. Well, again, there's certain guys that stay in touch with me, like Mark Carlisle. When he's at the track, he actually texts me every run. Tells me what 60 foot was. Tells me if he wins, this and that. I mean, that's great. I mean, we're buddies. At first we were, kind of like business associates, and, we've kind of evolved into a friendship. Same with Norris, and, I mean, I'm sure I'm missing people, but, there's a Chris Fosberg and all these guys, that, we will get together and just, do other stuff. But it's a good thing, but as time goes on, you really got to start picking and choosing, because you can really give away a lot of product and literally not get anything out of it.
Okay. And are you involved in any of the GTRs shooting for sixes here in the net? I'm sure it's going to happen this year, but I'm assuming you're doing drive shafts for those guys like Tony T1, AMS.
Yeah. Tony's actually an old friend. He's since the Honda days. The GTRs, it's kind of that's an odd car. I remember years ago being at PRI and seeing AMS pushing their car into the thing, and I had made 10 or 20 sets of axles, and I couldn't give these things away. I'm like that car at 999 horsepower wouldn't break a thing. It hit 1,000, and man, parts just started falling out from under it. I remember talking with them at that show and being like, "Can I just give you this stuff so I can say it's on the car?" I'm like, people ask me, and and in all honesty, up until about that horsepower, you probably don't need it. Now the newer, they kind of changed them a little bit, and I guess it was 14. And from what I understand, they're not as robust as the original ones were, but still, I mean, to have a stock car handle that much horsepower without doing much work is, was, good job for Nissan. but boy, I will tell you that, we did the rear axles, front axles, and that went through a transition, something, actually that sparked a interesting thing that you brought up there. We had a problem with this spline that went through the wheel side in the rear braking, and what was really strange about this, and it's a thing where you say engineering and real world are so completely different. We had an axle bar that was 30 spline, and the spline going through the wheel was 32. Now, naturally, you would think the bigger spline would win, especially when you put it inside a hub, because then it's supported, and the hub and would break. And man, I was scratching my head. I was like, man, it just makes no sense. So we went and bored and broached it and did the bigger spline. And then I thought about back, 10 years, whatever, Chris Fosberg, in his drift car, he, people don't give credit to drift cars and how rough they are in parts, but he was having trouble with a certain part, and we couldn't make it larger because of a bearing. The wheel bearing wasn't big enough. But long story short, I ended up making this spline section out of one material and the housing out of another, and making them mate together. And I remembered how well that worked for his car. It was actually Wall Stadium where it did the transition, and a lot of drift guys have a problem with that. I recently had the same issue with the FRSs, and this all coming together, I was like, I should go back to looking into that, and that's another one of the products that I'm kind of excited about. We've just redesigned, making like a modular CV that you heat treat the housing where the cage and race is a certain heat treat so it doesn't wear, but you can also make your spline as strong as you want it without messing either up. So, at one time it was either you have a strong spline and the CV wears out, or you get the CV where it doesn't wear out and the spline breaks. In certain applications it becomes a problem. But that GTR, I actually started making the outer in that two-piece design, and we were back to just direct bolt-in pieces. We didn't have to bore and broach the hubs, although people still ask for that other design. I believe that the direct bolt-in is probably as strong, if not stronger, due to that design.
Interesting. So yeah, I mean, you're using It doesn't hurt to have 40 years of experience doing this, right?
Yeah, and sometimes the gray matter gets a little dark, and you got to kind of put a light back there and say, hey, you remember that?
So you guys are selling your products through it seems like every channel. So I know you can get it through a wholesaler. You guys sell through Motivicity. You sell direct to shops, it sounds like.
Correct.
And you sell stuff direct to consumer off your webpage as well.
We do.
Can you tell us kind of the pros and cons of each channel? Like what works better for you, and why do you do all three of them?
Yeah. The reason we do all three is that you, as a manufacturer, you have to make sure that your margin stays where it should be. Coming from that rebuilt thing when it fell apart, working your butt off for no money, really, it sucks. So if you go into manufacturing, it's very hard in the States, and I say in the States for a reason. When you make a product, you've got to add so much profit into it that you can do that three-way drop to where a wholesaler can make money and he can sell it to the installer and he can make money, and then the installer makes money off the person that buys it. That's a very large spread. And this is just my opinion, a lot of stuff that's come in from China has come in so inexpensively, they can almost triple what it costs, and everybody makes a very decent margin over it. Manufacturing here in the States, you don't have the ability to do that. To actually put a part together with enough profit in it, what I found is I couldn't go strictly through warehousing because my margin would be too close. And I'm not saying we wouldn't survive. Of course we would, but I again, after 40 years, I don't want to survive. I want to have the fun of being able to, we just bought that Integrex. I mean, I could have bought a house for what it was worth, and as odd as it sounds, and don't get me wrong, I was full of cars and I have a lot of fun, personally, bicycles, motorcycles, whatever. But I find it's twofold. You need to keep your profit margins at a certain amount, and you can't, in my opinion, I don't look at what I sell to, say, Motivicity, and then what I sell to, a shop, and then what I sell to, I just look at it as a broad picture at the end of the quarter or the end of the year and make sure the margin has stayed where it is. Obviously, nobody likes a price when it's raised. Almost can't get away with it in today's market. Then the other side of it, and I will never probably go full one way or the other. I will have distribution because, everybody needs a warehouse. They need to be able to pick up that phone. And the guy, as long as they keep it on the shelf, in this day of drop ship, I have that same problem we spoke about earlier where I don't have enough inventory. I'm the manufacturer. I'm really not supposed to have, my manufacturing facility and a warehouse. The manufacturing facility, warehouse is supposed to warehouse it. But we keep the popular numbers and all that, and we've gotten our build times down. Moving into that new building really messed me up, and we were quite behind, a lot more so than I wanted to. But getting back to that, the warehouse has its place. The installer wants to be able to get it quick. If he gets it at a better price from me, but he has to wait 2 weeks and he just needs to do it, he can call the warehouse. It becomes a good thing. And, the person doing it by himself generally isn't, in dire need of it. And if they are, a lot of times we'll work with people. But one of the big things that has nothing to do with profit is keeping your finger on the pulse of what's going on. Mm-hmm. If you're selling to the shops, you're selling to the direct people, and like I said on the forums, you tend to see trends change. You tend to see, even if you have a product that you're making and there's something wrong, like that whole sound abatement thing started with, reemerged with the Hellcat, that the Hellcat has a horrendous rear end and it just makes noise. And I said, I think I can do something about that. And, kind of sparked the whole thing. And at the time there was even more knowledge that we could pull, and I was better at understanding things. And, it just emerged. But in answer to your question, keeping it a broad range will be Driveshaft shops.
Okay.
Way of doing things.
Perfect. Okay, so let's move on to more about yourself here, kind of, what you're looking for towards the future and stuff. So what's something right now that you struggle with business, and how do you deal with it?
I guess the biggest thing I struggle with is time. Time management. Like you said, the emails, I probably do too many of them. A lot of what we do with an email is, because when you start dealing with pro level cars, it's not like a 2010 Camaro where you can just design it once and put a part number on it and hand it to the to the production line or whatever it would be, or whatever you want to call it. Each individual part, you've got to know what questions to ask. You've got to know what, if somebody says, oh, I have this transmission, is it a roller output? Is it a bushing? This kind of horsepower, what kind of angles are you running? I kind of have like a mechanical mind. So somebody will ask me a question and I picture the car, and then I picture the tranny in the rear, and then, kind of sparks like a series of questions. And a lot of what I do is based off of this. I mean, there isn't a single drift car that one is like the other. There isn't a single drag car that one is like the other. They're similar, but there's so many little idiosyncrasies that I recently, was talking to my guys at the counter. I said, I need you to help me with this stuff, and then we started building a knowledge base, like on transmission numbers and codes and all this. Like, unfortunately, I remember, buddy Drew Amatrano, he was telling me this whole thing about the Indians and the chiefs, and how, I don't know, there's an actual science behind this, but it's something that they teach in like management, about how when the chief is the only one who knows how to do it and the Indians don't, it's a problem. And and it goes back to that, you're hired for a job and you got to do the job. Well, if I don't teach them certain aspects that I know, and it's not like I did it to to hold it tight for my job security. I just after you've been doing it this long, there's just so much rattling around up there that it comes on command. Sometimes I think I need a reboot and more memory. I got I'd love to put a couple of chips in my neck there and be able to access it a little better. But like say like we don't do anything with the 4x4 market. I mean, back when we were on Long Island, I know tons about that stuff, and it's just,
there's a ton of it at SEMA now too. So
yeah, and it's something I would love to get back into because I enjoy it. I love off-road stuff. I just actually I had to at one time. I remember that actually after we moved, somebody pulled in the parking lot with a really nice tube chassis off-road Jeep, and I had a ton of stuff going on. The machine time was out like 10 weeks, and it was all custom. And I went out, I looked at it, and I looked at the guy, and I said, look, I'm going to have to make a conscious decision to say I can't do this because I just, it got to the point where I wasn't going to be fair to him. I wasn't going to be, I wasn't going to be able to be focused like I should. So, time management is probably the hardest thing I deal with.
Awesome. Yeah. I think that's echoed by a lot of people. It's a very hard one to deal with. So what's your 1-year plan for the business?
1-year plan is to get that Integris machine up and running real good. A couple new cool products that have been floating around in my head for a while. One of the big things is by April is having, we a couple months ago, Greg Burrows, Lee, and a couple of the other guys, that whole problem with inventory. We had moved a bunch of stuff around in the building and made shelves and stuff. We want by April to have the top moving numbers for the installer base to be able to get on time. So I guess, this next year should be focusing on sound abatement, that 2-piece outer, and making sure inventory is on the shelf, and or down to a level to where it's, like a 7 to 10 day thing to get something out.
Okay. And do you have a 5-year plan? Like, do you think that far out? Is it going to be Driveshaft shop 4x4?
You know, I got this idea, this CV design in my head that I actually had my son Frankie. It's kind of like a pet project, and when I get it figured out, I will go into that because what I've noticed in that industry is there's a decent amount of players, but there's nothing new. There's no nothing's been reinvented for a while, and I think there's an opportunity for a high end. And when I say high end, I mean, stuff that just, like a U joint on a high angle varies in velocity, so it speeds up and slows down as it goes around a revolution. Well, CV is true to the term. So when you're on an off-road thing and you're trying to get up a hill, and if your power goes on and off and on and off every revolution, it's just think of how much better traction you would get with a constant velocity. So there's this design, like I said, I've been working on. It's a pet project. So if we do get caught up, I'd say that would be in the 5-year plan.
Okay. And we like to take action on Do It for a Living. Can you suggest an action item our listeners can take away to improve their situation?
Yeah, well, getting back to what I said earlier, if somebody's working for you and you like them, or you don't like them, either way, if you feel they're not right for the company, don't wait. You're not doing anybody any favor. I have this thing with my guys that I always say, that I say, guys, sometimes I feel like we're a football team and I throw the ball and everybody turns around and waits for him to get hit in the back of the head. I said, I want you guys facing me and you're struggling to grab that ball, and what I realize is that some people are there to put in their hours and go home. And don't get me wrong, there's places in a business for people like that. Not everybody's going to be as dedicated or into it as you are, but your key people that you rely on, you need to make sure that they have the same basic attitudes and just thought processes that you have, so you get through that day, and at the end of the day things are better. I always tell people, if you put a garbage can in the middle of a doorway, 9 people are going to just walk
right past
it. One guy is going to stop and move it. I want to hire that guy to move it.
That's your hiring process now, right?
Yeah, it's almost, it's as odd as it sounds, it's just like I said, it's a talent is part of it, but your ability to kind of not so much think out of the box, but just not let don't walk in with dragging one leg, like come on, man, let's have some fun, it's like we got to be here anyhow, what the hell.
Awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the quick answer questions, and these are usually just whatever comes to mind, just kind of give us an idea what it is. So tell us a game-changing product you've seen in the last year.
Some of the machines that have come out in our industry, although they've been out for a while, I guess my ability to buy them has changed. But, manufacturing and being able to do things faster, the Integrex we just bought, and 3D printing. I mean, doing prototypes in 3D is, it's a game changer for everyone. You don't have to make the part; you just kind of print it.
Do you guys have one?
No, we don't. But I have a friend that we send the files to, and he does them for us.
So you're utilizing one, you just don't have it in house.
Correct.
Okay. What software programs are you using daily?
Software programs, obviously my Outlook, for my emails, and the QuickBooks, and on the manufacturing side, SolidWorks, we're in that like all the time, with the prints and all that stuff, and the Mazak machines runs on what's called Mazatrol, so I guess that would be the most current ones that we do.
Okay. And do you have a smartphone? Do you have any favorite apps that you use?
I do. Gonna sound like an odd one, but I like Pandora.
All right.
I like listening to music a lot. I get some of my best thinking done when I'm either driving or we bicycle a lot. Matter of fact, we do mountain biking here on Tuesdays and Thursdays. A lot of the guys at the shop, we just go ride. Now it's got cold, it's been a little harder, but I love listening to music. It helps clear my mind out to help me think about stuff. But yeah, that's probably my favorite app these days.
Okay. And what's your favorite shop tool?
Favorite shop tool is probably going to be my old dial caliper that I've had for about 30 years. I don't go anywhere without it. If I leave my office, I quite often have to have it in my hand, and I leave it everywhere, and I have to go find it, or somebody brings it back to me. But yeah, my caliper.
Okay.
So.
And what kind of car are you driving right now?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I have a whole lot of cars. My daily driver, believe it or not, is a 39 Buick Street Rod.
All right.
I mean, I have other cars. I have newer cars. I have, like an Audi SUV and stuff. But my favorite car is that 39 Buick chopped and channeled Street Rod. I love the thing.
Did you build it yourself?
No, actually, I bought it. I found it was like one of those barn things. It was built in the 70s. And I bought it, and I went and looked at it. I had to come back 2 weeks later so the guy could get the cars away from it, to pull it out. And I got it out, and it had like a 283 with a 3-speed manual, and it was just like old school cool. And I started putting air conditioning and all this in it, and I've done a lot to it, but. I just to make it my own, I put disc brakes on it, had drum brakes kind of thing. But, my days of building complete cars is, kind of past. I used to do a car every 3 or 4 years, but now I like to get them to where they're, half, 3/4 of the way done and just kind of finish them. And that's only because I just don't have the time.
Okay.
Never did, but I used to make it. Now I just, have other priorities.
So what do you see the future of automotive performance being?
It's an interesting thing. I know there's been a lot of talk about how government might, kind of overshadow, being able to do anything or change anything. But, in all honesty, automotive performance is very segmented. You go to a show like SEMA or PRI, and you're walking past the booth, and there's go-karts, and the next thing is a dirt track, and the next thing is an oval track, and the next thing is an off-road vehicle, and then you have a drag track and a drift track. There's so many segments of this that even if they told us tomorrow we couldn't do anything, I've never met a more talented bunch and interesting people in my life. I mean, there are some scary, smart people in this industry. I think we'd figure a way out of it. I really do. I remember back in the days where I was a Driveshaft professional, and front wheel drive came, and I thought that was the end of me. Like I'm a dinosaur. And I ended up becoming somebody who knows probably more about CVs than most. It's going to evolve. It's going to change. I don't think it's going anywhere. I think it's just too many of us that like it and enjoy it and live for it. It's I think the best of days are to come when it comes to performance.
Cool. Yeah, so not the doom and gloom that some people have said lately.
Nah.
Okay. And how do we connect with you and your company?
Well, you can reach us by phone at 800-564-2244. Website is www.driveshaftshop.com. We're at 4530 South Mark Drive in Salisbury, North Carolina. We're on Facebook, Instagram, most of your ways to do it. Just about any forum, PM me if if you have a question. I live for this stuff. I really enjoy it. You get a problem with an angle or whatever it might be, I'd be more than happy to spend some time, see if we could fix it.
Awesome. Frank, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk with us and share your story.
I appreciate you giving a call. It was actually a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Do It for a Living. You can find out more about this guest, this show, and even details about what we just talked about at our website, doitforaliving.net. Check out the Facebook page at facebook.com/doitforaliving and tell us who you want to hear from. And most importantly, subscribe to the podcast. Click subscribe. Do it now. Seriously. I'll wait while you grab your phone. Open up the podcast app, tap the subscribe button, When you subscribe, you help us gain momentum and attract more high